First Day. A short story by Christopher Gorham Calvin. Spoiler warnings. Major spoilers for Shortcake, prophecy fulfilled. Joseph Madison's kitchen smelled of scorched eggs and cinnamon toast. He'd already ruined 3 batches trying to keep his hands busy, but his nerves wouldn't let him focus. He adjusted the flame beneath his pan for the 4th time, then watched a pat of butter sizzle, its hiss breaking the tense silence pressing in around him. A stream of morning sunlight slanted through the blinds, a steadily growing reminder that time was running short. Soon, his granddaughter would depart for her first day of school, a day Joseph had silently feared from the moment he'd agreed to be her ward. He cracked a pair of eggs, scrambled them, and added a light dusting of salt. With the steadiest hand he'd had all morning, he scooped the soft golden pile onto a pre-warmed plate, added the least burnt piece of cinnamon toast, and set it on the table next to a tall glass of orange juice. Joseph listened for his granddaughter's footsteps, which he could usually use to determine her state of readiness. A sharp, hurried patter meant she was running late and frustrated. A slow, dragging shuffle meant she was reluctant, but moving. Light, rhythmic skips meant she was dressed and in a good mood, often showing off for an imaginary audience. But this morning, there was nothing. Just silence. And Joseph didn't know what to make of it. Maybe his granddaughter was nervous too. In fact, it was a certainty. All children were nervous before beginning such a major life transition, and Josie, well, for her it would be an even greater transition than for others. Joseph had been so tangled in his own anxieties, in his meticulous breakfast preparations and unspoken fears, that he'd almost forgotten. For all her intellect and composure, Josie was still a child. A remarkable child, one the world might never fully understand. She didn't just learn faster, she thought differently. She moved through challenges with a kind of grace and calculation that could never be matched by her peers. Where other kids would worry about making friends or missing their parents, Josie would be 5 steps ahead. Heck, she'd be on another plane altogether, analyzing every social dynamic, predicting teacher and peer behavior, memorizing rules she'd have to pretend applied to her. Joseph had no doubt she'd survive the day. But fitting in, that was another matter entirely. "Josie," he called, starting up the stairs. "Your breakfast is ready." There was no response. Not verbally, nor in the familiar flurry of footsteps signaling his granddaughter had realized she was behind schedule. Joseph continued up the stairs and stepped softly toward her bedroom door. He listened again for the sound of movement, but heard nothing but the creaks of a settling home. Joseph pushed the door open, finding Josie seated in the middle of her neatly made bed. She was already dressed in a brand-new navy jumper and knee-high socks, her long, dark hair already brushed with mechanical precision. But she sat motionless, hands folded in her lap, and her face tilted downward, expression unreadable. "You okay, sweetie?" Joseph asked. "It'll be time to leave soon." Josie sighed, her voice soft and honest. "I don't want to go." Joseph smiled, her response not the least bit surprising. "I figured." "Why should I have to go?" Josie argued with eyes far too knowing for her age. "School is boring. I'd get so much more out of staying home with you, or going to Helix Unbound. There's this new research project." Joseph held up a hand to cut her off. "I'm well aware of the project that just launched. Maybe you can assist on afternoons you don't have homework." "You're actually going to make me do homework?" Josie groaned. "This is getting worse by the second." Joseph chuckled and joined his granddaughter on her bed. "You need a proper education, and that includes both going to school and doing homework. Besides, it's the law. You've reached the state-mandated age for formal education." "I know it's the law," Josie said, hopping off her bed with a huff. She grabbed a book from her dresser. It was a heavy tome with a dull leather cover and yellowed pages. "I've read the law, from cover to cover. Name another kid my age who's done that." Joseph didn't bother answering. Experience told him his granddaughter wasn't finished. Sure enough, she tossed aside the law book, then pointed to a stack of equally imposing volumes. "I've read biology, chemistry, physics, classic literature, local and global history, you name it." She shot him a smart look, suddenly struck by another relevant thought. "Oh yeah, and lest we forget, I can already read and write in multiple languages, with perfect grammar." "Lest we forget?" Joseph repeated. "That's age-appropriate speech." "Exactly," Josie said, as if he'd just made her case. "I'm sure you could work something out with Sheriff Holmes. Ask him for a special exemption. Don't make me sacrifice my intellectual stimulation for this facade." "Oh, we're getting dramatic now, are we?" Josie grunted at his dismissal and yanked a printed document from under her laptop. It was an academic study published a few years earlier that she'd printed in anticipation of this conversation. "See for yourself. Forcing kids of advanced intelligence through a standard education protocol reduces their intellectual stimulation by an average of 78%. Prolonged conformance without specialized intervention can lead to permanent intellectual decline." Impressed by his granddaughter's summary, Joseph scanned the study's abstract, then flipped to a data table printed near the back. "A decline of less than 1/100%, he noted. "And this result is barely statistically significant." Josie snatched the article from him. "Sending me to school is tantamount to child abuse." "You're going." With an exaggerated grunt, she flopped back on her bed in protest. Joseph let her sulk for a moment, watching her small frame stretched across the quilt. She looked so much like Amanda in that moment. Innocent, stubborn, brilliant, and beneath it all, uncertain. He leaned back on his hands and let out a quiet breath. "You know, I didn't like school much either. I thought it was beneath me." Josie peeked out from under her arm. "You did?" He nodded. "Yep. I was always 10 steps ahead of the class. The teachers thought I was showing off. The other kids thought I was nerdy and weird. They'd always pick each other for group activities, work together on out-of-class projects, and compare test results like they were in a competition. I always worked alone. And I wasn't about to share my perfect scores with kids that would make fun of me for them." Josie sat up slightly. "So why'd you keep going?" "Because, despite the drawbacks, I still needed to learn. I didn't have your genetic enhancements. I didn't have a clue what chemistry or biology was at your age. But school taught me. It laid the foundation that set me down my life's path, that led to my work with Helix Unbound, that led to the creation of your parents. And you." Josie frowned, intrigued but unconvinced. "But since I already have that knowledge—" "You have book knowledge," Joseph clarified. "But school is about so much more than that." "What do you mean?" Joseph sighed, knowing he wasn't the best person to explain the concept of social dynamics to his abnormally intelligent granddaughter. "You know those kids who thought I was a nerd? They were right. I was a nerd. I loved knowledge. I loved science. I loved to read and ingest endless amounts of information." "Like me," Josie said. "Like you, and like your parents. But my love of book knowledge blinded me to an equally important aspect of mental development: social interaction. We aren't the only people on this planet. Statistically speaking, we, as individuals, are even more insignificant than that bogus argument you tried to make earlier." Josie blushed with guilt. "Collectively," Joseph continued, "humanity matters. But being part of humanity means being part of the social collective. You need empathy, communication, social adaptability. Those things don't come from books alone. You have to learn them from interacting with others, your family, your peers, your teachers. You need to observe. You need to perform trial and error. And believe me, there will be error. There will be error and embarrassment and apprehension, but there will also be growth. And once you combine your book knowledge with social skills, there will be nothing you can't accomplish. He paused, his voice softening. Your parents were the smartest and most talented people I've ever known, but neither of them got the chance to grow up in a world that accepted them. They were isolated, always living just outside of society, despite efforts to integrate. That was a failure on my part. Joseph's eyes met hers. I won't make the same mistake with you. Josie didn't say anything for a moment. Then she pushed herself upright, legs dangling over the edge of the bed. So I'm not going to school to learn an antiquated curriculum. I'm going to school to connect with others? Joseph nodded. Exactly. Josie was quiet again, but this time her silence was less like resistance and more like contemplation. She let out a deep sigh and muttered, I still think it's a waste of time. Joseph chuckled. That's fine. Think what you want as long as you go. Josie grinned and slid off the bed. Fine, but if anyone makes me glue macaroni on construction paper, I'm vaporizing the classroom. Let's stick to using words to convey your emotions, Joseph suggested. At least until the second week. Josie frowned, knowing only the first half of his statement had been sincere. I guess the no superhuman powers outside the house rule is still in effect? He nodded resolutely. That sucks. You want me to learn social skills, but you're asking me to lie to everyone else about who I really am. Joseph stood and rested an understanding hand on her shoulder. I'm asking you to conceal, not lie. I know it seems like a technical discrepancy, but it could mean the difference between a normal life and one like your parents were forced to live. Josie chewed on her lip. You think I'll end up like them? Joseph gave the question heavy consideration, then answered, No. You'll be better than them. The sacrifices they made to bring you into this world have already laid your path. I just need to make sure I don't screw things up guiding you down it. Josie mused. No pressure then. None whatsoever, Joseph said with a laugh. He checked his watch. So much for breakfast. You've got about 1 minute before your bus gets here. And if I miss it? She asked playfully. Then you walk. Josie sighed dramatically. Whatever shall I do? In a blink, her body broke apart into glowing blue particles. They swirled for a moment before gliding out of her room and down the stairs. By the time Joseph caught up, his granddaughter had already rematerialized, put on her shoes, and grabbed her backpack. That's the kind of thing you can't do at school, he reiterated. No taking shortcuts to avoid running late to classes. You hear me? Josie rolled her eyes. Then she spotted a white tag hanging from the side of her backpack. What's this? The school requires a label on all personal belongings. She flipped the tag so she could see the blocky writing on the other side. Josephine Madison. She scowled. That's not my name. It's your legal name. Legal? Do you want me to quote legislative doctrine for you? Joseph pushed her toward the front door. It's as legal a name as someone like you can have. It's also the name on your forged birth certificate, your enrollment records, your immunization forms. Yeah. They were outside now, and Josie's bus was turning the corner a block away. Don't you dare change it, Joseph said. The instructions we received specified full names were to be used. I won't mess with it, Josie grumbled. But I can't guarantee a bottle of whiteout won't have a convenient tumble off my teacher's desk at just the right moment. Josie. Just kidding, she said with a grin that left Joseph skeptical. Then she took one last stab at a reprieve from this ridiculous new chapter of her life. Are you sure I can't change your mind?" Joseph ignored her plea. "Bye, sweetie." The bus released a hydraulic hiss as it stopped at their curb. Inside, almost every window seat was already occupied by another child from the neighborhood. Josie turned, then froze in her tracks. "Do I talk to them?" "If you want to." "What if they're, I don't know, dumb?" Joseph laughed aloud. "Then you'll learn patience." The bus's doors creaked open like the jaws of some great yellow beast, surfacing Josie's inner child. "You'll be here when I get home?" she asked nervously. Joseph nodded. "Always." She gave him a quick hug, then darted for the open doors. Josie hesitated at the first step that awaited her, until the bus driver welcomed her with a friendly greeting, easing her nerves enough to make the climb. She hesitated again once she reached the aisle, her mental pipelines clogged with the social assault before her. Josie glanced fearfully at Joseph, who gave her a tearful nod goodbye. Then she disappeared from view. The bus rumbled off down the street, Joseph chasing along the stretch of his sidewalk. He'd put on a brave face for his granddaughter, but now the terrifying reality of sending her into the world hit him with the weight of the cosmos. He panted, his heart racing, his eyes scanning desperately for any sign. And there she was, looking back at him from the bus's rear window. She seemed scared, but ready. Joseph wiped the tears from his eyes just in time to see another girl tap Josie on the shoulder. The girl then held out a shy hand, and Josie reluctantly shook it. As the bus turned onto the next street, the two fell into conversation. Joseph exhaled with relief. He'd never gotten the chance to be a proper parent with Amanda and Evan, and he wasn't sure he was even good at the job. But he was doing his best, and Josie was doing hers. And together, they would tackle the ever-evolving challenge known as growing up. A flicker of blue caught Joseph's eye. He traced it to a small electrical spark, weaving through the morning breeze. It danced around him, found his face, and gently pecked his cheek. The electric kiss made his heart flutter before zipping away to discreetly return to its source. Joseph smiled at his granddaughter's sweet transgression. Yep, he thought, they would get through this, even if there were some hiccups along the way.